the hardest thing to do as a believer is probably to stop negative thinking. Maybe it's across the board. It's probably across the board, and I'm just putting it in the context of being a believer. But for me, that's been the hardest part of this process of transition that I'm in now. I mean, for a lot of you probably know that I was involved in music, involved on big platforms, big church, and then eventually, I mean, you would think that that would be something that serves you, like when you serve at that kind of level. But it's not been my experience. And the problem is too much of reliance has been, like, maybe this is my fault, but I put too much of reliance on an organization instead of putting all that reliance on God. And I believe that was probably the downfall. Now, am I saying full disclosure? I have nothing against organizations. I have nothing against your church. I've got nothing against churches. Some of my closest friends are pastors. I love serving in churches. What I have a problem with is when you are taught to put that church organization above your relationship with God. That's been the biggest problem for me. And the most liberating thing for me was when I got out of that mindset. And this was pre-COVID. You see, I got sick and tired of just existing. Because look, I was working hard, I was doing all the right things. I was focused on ministry and I was gigging and things were all right, but there was still something that was not right. Like, you can't really put your finger on it, right? But that's how it was for me. I don't know if it's the same for you, but that's how it was for me. I found myself in a place where I was sick and tired. I was sick and tired of being where I was. And something had to change. And so one day I was sitting at home. We were still living in Newlands back then. And my wife and kids were not there. And I spoke to God. And I said, listen, I'm tired of this. I need you to come in and take control. Now, for me, what I did is I blasted the music for about 3-4 hours nonstop. I had one song played, and it's ironic that now I'm not even involved on the music side as much. But I feel like the sheer volume of how loud that song was is the thing that allowed me to stop thinking. And that was almost like a breakthrough moment for me. At the same time, I decided I'm going to read the Bible for myself. So I was given a gift of a Bible. Let me just grab this Bible. Oh, there we go. So I was given this gift, and I mean, I didn't know. I didn't know what was in here. I'll be completely honest with you. I had no idea the kind of power that was inside this book, because it wasn't taught to me correctly. And once I started reading the Bible, I started to see that if you want God to talk to you, this is where it's at. because I believe that God orchestrated things from that point on. Because I said, Father, I just need you to take control. I am sick and tired of where I am. I need some help. And so, as I read the Bible, God is talking to me. And then at the time, during where I was in the church that I was involved in, so, I mean, there was all this political things happening, and it just wasn't sitting well for me. Because, like, I was like, hey, let's just go to church because, let's start talking about Jesus. Let's start talking about His Word. Not about, and look, I don't want to get too much into that, but that's where I found myself. I found myself longing for the Word. Like, I wanted God to talk to me through the Word. And He did. I mean, I started reading the Bible and started getting really into the Bible and started listening to Bible teachers really articulate the Word properly with substance, and find nuggets in the Word. And it literally, my mindset started to change from that point on, where I was exposed to truth. And when you're really exposed to truth, you can't really be unexposed to it. I'm not sure if you know what I mean. But when I got exposed to truth, biblical truth, I just went all out. And I'm telling you that I'm still on that trajectory of growth now. Even today, like, there's not a day that goes by where I won't go out and put on a Bible teaching or listen to sermons or find something new. Like, I'm reading Genesis now and reading about Noah again and reading about the ark and reading about how the ark was God's plan for Noah, but God's plan of protection. So it was on God's instruction, Noah built the ark. So the ark was for his protection, but it was also for his metamorphosis. The atmospheric pressure of the world was different before the flood and after the flood. God needed Noah and his family to be in that enclosed environment so that they could redevelop, metamorphosize into the next level. And for some of us, we get put into an ark and it's God's plan, and we start questioning the plan. Noah stayed in the ark for over 300 days. The flood only started 7 days after he was in. So these are all significant things, significant numbers. There's a season of time where you follow the instruction of God, but what He told you to do and when He actually starts fulfilling on that, there's a season that you have to go through and wait. Right? And we don't get taught this. Like, that's an example I'm trying to give you now. It's like, I was not taught this. I was always taught, no, God is going to come through for you. And it was like, there was nothing practical that I could use on a daily basis. Like how to handle life. And I started yearning for it. And I believe that when you get to a place like that, then you know that you're ready for the next level. It's like you have to get into the Word of God. Not because you have to, but because there's actually no other way that you could go except for His Word. And that's kind of where I found myself a few years ago. And I mean, I started this thing off talking about negative thinking. One of the things to look out for is, I wouldn't say look out for, what would I say? Like, more often than not, we're trying to control outcomes. So we make decisions and we hope a decision goes a certain way. And we hope that outcome would be favorable for us. Unfortunately, We cannot control all those decisions. We cannot control all those, sorry, we can't control all those outcomes, but we can control the decisions. Now, we have to learn also that sometimes, well, most times, and I learned this from Myron, most times, all the time, intention, the minute you have an intention to do something, destruction is going to follow that, or distraction is going to follow that intention. So when I decide I want to do something good, immediately something wrong happens. I can't tell you how many times this happens, but it happens. And what I'm learning now is that I need to be able to control that. My reaction to circumstances. There's so many things that happened this year alone that could have derailed us completely. Like derailed my frame of thinking, derailed the trajectory that I know that I'm supposed to be on. Completely messes me up. It could have. And am I saying that it didn't affect me? No, I'm not. I'm saying it did affect me, but I'm saying that staying close to God through His Word allowed me to handle those situations differently, handle those circumstances differently. It allowed me to make decisions that generally wouldn't make sense. Like, hey, somebody just, took you on for 75 grand for your inverter system, like gave you inferior service and pretty much stole your money. Naturally, you want to go after that person. And I wanted to. And then eventually I was like, you know what? It's going to take more mental bandwidth for me to go through that battle. And I'm going to lose weeks and weeks and weeks of my life that I need. I'm going to lose weeks and weeks and weeks of concentration that I need in order to fulfill what I'm put here on this earth to do. I know it's not like, this is not popular teaching, but this is what I'm living. And I believe that when you can get into a place like that, it will give you a peace that surpasses all understanding, peace that Jesus promises in the Word. That's the kind of peace. Right? I've come that you may have life more abundantly. Abundant life. Like, what does that mean to you? What does abundant life mean to you? Ask yourself the question. We don't always know what it is until God exposes us to what it is. I mean, confession. Before I left my last occupation, I basically had meetings and I said, listen, I want X amount of rands in remuneration because I believe that I'm worth that. Oh my goodness. Even as I'm saying it now, it's like so derogatory to God. I believe that what I'm giving to you guys as a service is worth X amount of rands, right? X amount of money. And when I look back at it now, God moved me. Like, I thought there was a lot of money at that time. I'm trying to give you perspective. Right? I'm trying to show you here that God knows better than you. We don't want to hear that. We want control. The thing is, we want God. But we want God to help us on our terms. That's the difference. And I'm telling you that when you relinquish control, when you stop trying to control how God maneuvers things, He will blow your mind in such a radical way that you cannot fathom how He did it. That's my testimony. I wanted X amount of rands because I thought that's what I was worth. And then I relinquished control. God basically 10x'd that number. I am not exaggerating. There are months that I earn 10 times the amount of money that I thought I was worth. because I decided I was going to relinquish control to God. I mean, that's a completely different topic. Think about self-worth. Like, what are you actually worth? Like, I know you think you are worth so much or you are worth something, but you are worth what somebody else is basically willing to pay for your life, right? And if you really think about it, Jesus found worth and value in you and me, that he paid with his life for our lives. That's how you know your worth. Anyway, that's a different topic. But negative thinking, the only thing that can replace negative thinking is not negative thinking. I know it sounds like an oversimplification. It's not. You have to be intentional about not thinking negative anymore. Not thinking derogatory to yourself, not thinking or belittling yourself. You have to intentionally fill up your mind with thoughts that are contrary to what you're thinking right now. Constantly. You have to constantly be filling yourself up with word, constantly be filling yourself up with strategy and mindset, structure, how to think differently. PD says it all the time, but it's true. Your life only goes where your mind goes. Your life only goes where your mind goes. So your mind eventually has to get out of where it is now so that you can go to where your life is supposed to be. But you are not going to physically get there until you start thinking that you're there. This is true. It's true stuff. Until you start thinking about where you are headed, until you start thinking, you're not going to get there. I'm 100% serious about this. You have to start thinking. Like, if you want to be a millionaire, I'm not saying start thinking about the million. I'm saying start thinking about what kind of person do I need to be able to handle that kind of capacity? What kind of person do I need to be to handle that kind of capacity? Now be careful. Be careful with this one, because the minute you decide you want to increase your capacity, God's going to meet you at that place. He's going to start increasing your capacity for real. And with that growth comes growing pains. Right? So it needs to take place mentally first. And God is going to allow things to happen so that you are mentally wrecked and then rebuilt so that you minimize the rest of the damage. Right? And that's how your mind increases capacity first. Once your mind increases capacity, your life is going to follow. Your spending patterns change. The way you think about life changes. The way you think about money changes. The way you think about people changes. The way you think about giving changes. It gives you a whole different perspective. But that has to be a decision, a choice that you make. You are the one that has to make the choice, the decision to go from where you are to where you believe God is supposed to take you. Like, God has the perfect plan. I have no doubt. I have no doubt. He's proving this to me over and over and over. And we have to be able to relinquish our decisions. Like, it's hard for me not to play music. And I know that I should be playing music. I eventually will start playing music again. But I get so much of fulfillment out of this that it's almost like I don't need music anymore. I know that sounds weird, but that's the truth. It's almost as if maybe do I need to play music? Like, and I know I'm gonna eventually play because my kids love it and I still feel the nudge, but I don't feel the release. And that's the thing about talking to God all the time. It's He allows you to like He communicates. Spirit of God communicates. Feel the release. Like once you feel the release, then it's game time, right? So, I mean, yeah, you're gonna mindset everything. Mindset is everything. Don't be fooled into thinking you can change your habits by just changing your habits. Don't be fooled into thinking you can just put things into place, into structure, and then follow that, and you're gonna be great. Like do one change and then it's all super. It's done. There's so much that needs to happen. Um, it's doable, but it's gonna take dedication and time on your part. Now, the only kind of motivation that will what am I trying to say here? Make sure that your motivation to succeed is bigger than just a small goal that you have to succeed. Like, oh God, I just want to buy a car, a nice car. I mean, just work harder at your job then and buy another car. Right? Like if your motivation to succeed is a car, then you know, like with me, I my motivation to succeed is I want to build a better life for my family. I want to make sure that they're covered. Like I didn't want a car or like, I mean, when we were living at my in-laws, we said we're gonna move out of there when we can afford to buy a house. Honestly, I thought we'd buy a house in about 20 years. That's the truth. I could not see a plan or a pathway of how I'm going to afford to buy a house. God orchestrates things. He orchestrated events. Some events were not favorable to us, but it was part of his plan. Now, it's the way we find ourselves. I didn't want cars. I mean, I go from unemployed to owning to buying a house and buying two cars within like 12 months. And I'm just saying that because I want to give you perspective. Like, I know that I could not have achieved any of that without his help. There's no way. There's 100% no way. But I relinquished control to God. And I watched how God has come through for us over and over. It's still blowing my mind. He's still blowing my mind. It's unbelievable. But that's the God we serve. And I believe that if you're trying to get to that kind of place, I'm not just talking about the earning stuff and the nice material things, but the peace that you have. I believe that the relationship you have with God, between you and God, not you and your church, not you and God through your church. I'm not talking about you standing up and singing a worship song and singing hallelujahs. I'm talking about you going into your private place and crying to God when nobody sees you. Come on now. I'm talking about that kind of commitment when nobody is watching, when you are alone, when you're driving in your car alone and tears are going down your eyes. Who are you talking to? Come on now, this is real talk. Real talk. I'm talking about that relationship, not your Sunday morning relationship that you go to for 2 hours to the church and pretend that you love everybody. Then you go to Monday and you're living in hell again. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about with God. Is it a Monday to Monday relationship? That's what I'm talking about. If you can get to a place like that, I will guarantee you that your life will change almost overnight. Because your mind will change first, and once your mind starts to get reconstructed, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. That word they're renewing is renovate. With renovation is reconstruction taking place in your mind. That will set you on the path to a successful life that you are not going to be able to make sense of. Let that sink in for a second. A successful life that you will not be able to make sense of. That's what God is going to do that if you allow Him to. Not if you sow a seed, not if you pay your tithes. If you cultivate a relationship with Him personally, one on one, everything changes. That's a guarantee. If it doesn't, then I don't know how authentic a relationship is. I'm sorry. I'm giving you an experience. I was not authentic. It looked like I was. Listen now. It looked like I was. I was standing on stages. I was leading 80,000 people in worship, but still dead here. Something was wrong here. Then I decided, let me go talk to this Father on my own. And He completely blew my mind. Went to levels. Went to levels. That's where God's going to take you. So I'm going to jump. Thanks for taking the time for listening, or time to listen to me ramble for however long this was. And share it if you feel like this is going to help somebody. Or just drop a comment below. Drop some thoughts, drop some questions, whatever the case is. I want to engage. If you want to know more about my story, maybe drop a question. Drop a few questions, and I'll record another one like this, answering some of your questions. So until then, get into your Bible. Start talking to the Father. Allow God into your life. Listen, He's a gentleman. God is waiting to engage with you. He is waiting to engage constantly with you. Don't deny yourself that privileged life. Don't do it. All right, I said enough. I think you get the point. I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.